This is the Lydian spin, and we're not going to stop. But we would appreciate any help we can get because, look, our mouths do not run on gas and air alone, occasionally food and drink. So if you wouldn't mind contributing, no contribution, too large or too small, because we're just going to keep going, whether or not you help us out. Your gain, your loss.
The PayPal is paypal.me/TSD1975. That's paypal.me/TSD1975.
It would help. We're going to keep going. We don't like to beg, and certainly we're not, but actually, it's a fucking command. Take it or leave it. Thank you. This is the Lydian Spin. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, finally back in Brooklyn.
Yes, we're both in Brooklyn right now. Yeah, exactly.
Road dogging for
a
like
long time. All winter so far.
And the thing is, I had like a quarter inch of snow in Stockholm, 1 day of rain. That was and freezing cold in Hamburg. But other than that, 6 weeks of it was cold in Canada. That was the last shows, but I missed all the blizzards here. I missed all the really bad weather. It was kind of miraculous, actually. With Sebastian Greppo behind the wheel for most of the Suicide Tribute, the Big Sexy Noise. I did some solo shows. It was came back for 1 day, went to Canada for 3, saw our friends up there.
Well, that means you're blessed a bit. I mean, because winter touring can always be a little bit of a gamble. I mean, the weather can really fuck up your tour. That's for sure.
No disruptions whatsoever.
That's
it was
great.
pretty smooth sailing. All the shows were great, and great to be rocking with Big Sexy Noise again. Always fun with Hurtado. Wonderful, good times. Back in the mix.
Back in the mix. So, well, there's a lot of news.
And also, yeah, before you get into the news, sure. It was great to be in I was in many countries. Out of this one, the misery pit of discontent, it was it was very good to be
pleasant.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, you just came back from Canada, and the majority of Canadians consider the United States a bigger threat than Russia. Well, duh, we're right next to them. But it's that dumb, it's that bad. It's all distraction. So I don't know, these guys who fuck kids don't get embarrassed or arrested or something. It's seems like
the only person in prison for all of this ongoing nonsense is a woman, and then an ex-prince might go to prison.
Well, I'm glad. I don't give a shit about the royals, but I'm glad King Charles is doing that, because I mean, it's kind of a statement to maybe saving civilization. Like, yes, we might have to be a world of laws. There's been some really interesting commentary and some insights that I've been reading about, and different people's comments. Well, as Pam Bondi was up there with all these victims behind her.
Brutal. I saw it. What a
so she doesn't even turn around. She doesn't turn around and make eye contact. But this was bigger than her just rejecting them and not acknowledging their pain. This was symbolic to the whole Epstein class.
Yeah.
Everyone involved. So first of all, everyone that was associated with him, which is a lot of powerful people, like a lot. Even after he was being investigated, where was their line in the sand of when they weren't going to associate with him? They didn't have one. So as she turns a blind eye on these victims, that's symbolic to the people that send our soldiers to kill over 2 million people in the Middle East, turning a blind eye to them. The economic violence as the classified gets bigger, turning a blind eye on just the majority of civilization being destroyed by their policies. All these people just turning their back on it. Meanwhile, they go and have these kind of, fancy retreat orgies with kids. That's very symbolic to all society, and it's not going away. It's not going away.
This has been the problem since the freaking cave. Go back to Desaad. He predicted Epstein in all of his exaggerative sexual exposés. Here we are again, and the thing is, no justice.
Well, I mean, going to conspiracy theory or not. So, I mean, a lot of people are bringing up Kubrick and Eyes Wide Shut, who just happened to die shortly after that. And what about Pasolini after fucking Salo? He just happens to get killed. But
Well, and another guy who supposedly committed suicide did not, who was about ready to spill his guts on the Epstein thing a few years ago, right after Epstein was put to prison, he was taken out.
yeah, that was I know exactly what you're talking about.
The Dow is over 50,000. Why aren't we talking
Oh,
about
right,
that?
right. Oh, yeah, that.
Oh yeah, all the wars. I stopped. Yeah,
So,
well,
so,
you started a
The
lot when
Dow
you're
is over
starting a
50,000.
war,
That's all you need to know.
so
war against the
this is gonna
American
be
people.
this is what they're gonna try to pull. This is what they're gonna try to pull, and why they're not gonna release any more stuff in the files. And one of the big reasons why Netanyahu met with Trump this past week, they're gonna try to pull the 2007, 2008 too big to fail things. So none of the bankers go to jail, and the banks aren't broken up. They're trying to argue the names are the most important people that run all civilization. If you expose them, the whole thing's going down. That's what they're trying to fucking sell.
Well,
And we'll see if that works. We'll see if that works.
Should go down.
They're too big to fail. Okay.
Well, he's failing on a lot of fronts. He's failing on every lawsuit he puts up on the table.
Yeah, well, yeah, every policy he has is
Every policy, and who's in his peace project? All dictators. Makes a lot of sense, right? Yeah.
And our tariff trade deficit is the worst since 1960. I mean, all these things are utter disasters. And of course, the environmental stuff. Oh yeah, because you had in DC one of these massive sewage lines break. The Potomac is more polluted than it has been for who knows how long, and it's just EPA standards are gone. Like just let it all, and we're just killing ourselves. So it makes no sense. I don't know why. Well, I don't know. It's all exhausting. All right, so Olympics. Are you watching any Olympics, Lydia?
No, are you?
I a little bit. I mean,
what?
Well, I mean, just kind of. I have it in the background. I do work sometimes. So I checked out the women's hockey, America versus Canada. America won.
Great.
But there's been these epic figure skating collapses of our superstars. They're kind of, slipping on banana peels at the finish line.
I mean, that's the only thing I'd be interested in is probably the figure skating.
Well, that guy was Ilya. You needed the quad god. He calls himself that. He totally collapsed. And then you have Amber Glenn, who just kind of totally fucked up. And I guess they're arguing, they make these kind of social media arguments like the pressure and blah 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 and all this stuff, but isn't that their job? It
takes one wrong spin and you can
I get that, but is that any more pressure than during the Cold War? Or what about Jesse Owens in fucking front of Hitler in Berlin? I mean, isn't your job to perform under pressure? I mean, nothing against their talent. I mean, they got there, but I don't get it. Is it maybe more precious?
I really don't care.
You don't care.
I don't give
All
a
right.
shit about the Olympics.
Well,
another distraction.
All right. Well,
a pretty distraction of sports that most people can't play and never achieve.
Well, I love the fact. I love the fact that you were a gymnast as a kid. That's fun.
Well, I could still put my legs over my head, but don't tell anybody.
Did you do flips? Like, what was your
horse?
forte?
The horse. I could
the
do
horse.
The horse.
Oh, so your fucking arms were fucking strong as shit.
Hello, have you ever felt them? Yes.
And your legs, yeah, they're both solid rocks. Exactly.
Well, I don't know how it continued because I certainly haven't jumped a horse in quite a while.
When was the last time you rode a horse?
Pardon me?
Did you ever go horseback riding?
That's not what I call it. No.
Okay.
I don't go bareback riding either. Just
hey.
Oh.
All right. Well,
I hear the Super Bowl party was a laugh riot.
I mean, I had a good time. Why not?
It's funny because I don't know where I was, but I texted Keckler one night, and he was just leaving at 6 a.m. with Kevin Shea from the Super.
When those two get together.
They were at my house last night.
Neither of them get like wasted, but they just kind of hang until the wee hours, and they kind of their eyes are shifting around, observing things, and giggling in the corner. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Keckler was great.
Of course, always is. So is Kevin Shea.
Yes, he's great.
Had him here last night. Yeah, I had to finally say, and it wasn't even that loud. I'm like, all right, gotta wrap it up here. I do need bed. I need a heating pad. Thank you
That
very
was
much.
that's a funny that's a funny date that it's a regular for of yours. It's
Yeah,
like
we're a throuple, but
once a month or something like that. Yeah, I guess.
whenever we can squeeze
Whenever you
it
can.
in. Whenever we can squeeze it in.
All
Yeah,
right.
we got
All right.
shit to do.
Sure.
Shit.
Well, we have shit to do too. I got to do stuff tonight, and we have a lot of stuff to plan for the next coming months. Yeah. So I guess this week our very special guest, the one and only Gary Wilson. We're psyched to have him.
King of the weird.
Well, king of a lot of things.
Yeah. This is the Lydia and Spin with Lydia Lunch, Tim Dahl, and as has been noted, the king of weird, the master of lo-fi funk, the very mysterious, eccentric, eclectic Gary Wilson. Hello, welcome to the show.
Well, hello there, Lydia.
Hi. Well, Gary, we met once, but you'll never remember because it was briefly. I was playing in the band with Jan Terry, opening up for you and a belated Halloween concert in New York because it was belated because Hurricane Sandy basically put New York City on hold for a couple of weeks. That was a good show.
Yeah, I had a good time there. I always have a good time when I perform in New York. As you may know, I'm from upstate New York originally.
As I am. From
Oh,
Rochester,
yeah.
you're from Endicott. I don't even know where Endicott is, though.
That's kind of central west.
Yeah, well, it's on the border of Pennsylvania in the south there. It's near Ithaca, New York.
Yep.
Binghamton, New York.
Exactly.
It's where IBM started.
Is Endicott where IBM started?
Oh.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I worked for IBM when I graduated from high school. My dad worked there for 40 years. And
what did you do there?
What did I do there?
Well, yeah.
Oh, just various things. They would put me on repair circuitry, clean the mainstream. They had those big computers in 1971. I don't know if
mainframes
at the time. So they were huge.
Those were huge.
Yeah,
they were huge. Yeah.
Hold on, we're losing you for a second, Gary. You're talking too much about computers, and they're starting to fight
freezing.
Oh yeah.
Do you like computers?
But yeah, can you? Well, I seem to be using my phone mostly for most of my computer stuff now. I have an iMac, but it's not connected to the internet right now, so I use my iPhone for most of my computing stuff. But yeah, those were the days. Like I say, the Endicott. There were blocks and blocks and blocks of IBM buildings, and yeah, it was. I was 18, so I was still pretty young at the time.
Well, IBM is still going pretty strong in a direction people didn't anticipate. Not necessarily in the personal computer, but they're artificial intelligence, a lot of things.
Yeah, I often wonder, because they have, at the time, they had thousands of people working for them, and I worked there for about a year or two back then, but I guess factory life wasn't meant for me at the time.
Are you going into AI or are you going away from AI?
Well, I don't really use it. Some people have made videos of my songs with AI, but I don't really fool with it too much. It's interesting media, but I just don't use it for myself at this point.
Well, I mean, you started doing all kinds of weird tape mixes and recording. You started doing music when you were very young. 8, is that right? 8 years old?
Yeah. Well,
dad being a
yeah,
stand-up bass
starting in
player.
grammar school.
And you
Yeah,
played
well, that
you
was
played
part
upright
of the
bass
thing.
too. You played upright bass too, which I play as well.
Yeah, well, that's what I was taught, and all the Wilsons had to take a musical instrument in school, so I started.
Uh-oh. Hold on, Wilson. You're freezing up. All right, Gary. That was we'll have to
We're having
fill here.
glitches.
I know he's out maybe in the desert. I don't know where he is. He's in
He's in
California.
San Diego.
Oh, he's in San Diego. Okay. All right. Interesting. Oh, then
Well,
let's see, let's see if he comes
using
back.
his iPhone. It's not working. Oh, there he goes. He's gone.
Let's see what's going on here.
So
There he. Oh, you're back. I'm hearing you. Is it a different location, Gary? Are you in a different room? Are you there? I hear him breathing.
hello?
Oh yes, I hear you, but you're frozen. Your visuals are frozen, but I hear you. Do you hear me?
Yeah.
You do. Okay.
Try to get back onto this. Hi.
Hi. Oh yes, you're there. Great. So we left
Am
off.
I there?
Yes, we left off on you starting music. Your dad worked for IBM. Did you like computer music? Did you like the early electronic composers and or did you not know about that until later? Or what was your relationship with that stuff?
Well, as you know, at the time, I was a big fan of John Cage.
Okay.
And I was playing in the school ensembles. I was writing avant-garde classical music.
Okay.
At the time, and my violin teacher, she suggested I reach out to John Cage. At the time, I was 15 years old. In 10th grade, and so I said, "Well, what the hell would John Cage want to, talk to some kid from upstate?"
Well,
but anyways, I found.
How did you reach out to him? How did you reach out to him, and where were you, and where was he at the time?
I'm trying to hear what's going on here with my.
I hear you loud and clearly. So the question was, how did you even have a contact with John Cage? I mean, was he that accessible?
Well, what I did was our local post office in Endicott had a Manhattan phone book, and
nice.
So there's a lot of John Cages live in New York area.
There are. Okay.
So I called every John Cage in the phone book. And I finally reached his number, and he said, "Well, yes, send your scores to a particular post office box," and which I did. And then in 3 weeks, I followed up, and he invited me to his house. So
was he living with Merce Cunningham at the time? Did you meet Merce as well?
Well, Merce, well, at the time, that gets into my meeting with David Tudor, but
really cool.
Did you send a cassette recording or what kind? How did you send your recording at that period?
Scores.
Well, what I did is I had scores,
just the score,
written scores. So I sent the scores to his post, and then he invited me. And then my mother drove me from Endicott. He was living near Haverstraw, New York, at the time, which is kind of outside of New York City, and so. We got to the, I'm looking for his house in this kind of small wooded area, and we got lost, and so I called his number. I said, "Hey, Mr. Cage, I can't find your house," and so he drove down in his car and he picked me up, and he, my mother waited for me at the small store, yeah, so making small talk with John Cage as we're driving to his house. And, he said, "Gary, I never made enough money off music till I was 50 years old." I'm not sure. And I was 15 at the time, 1969. And so we got to his house, and for the next few hours, we went over my scores with Cage correcting things, offering suggestions, and so it was wonderful, but but then what happened is the following year I made an unannounced trip, with my good friend Frank Rome. And
with your good friend Frank who?
So Frank Roma, who's been my saxophone player for many years. So we get to John Cage's house and he's not there. This was unannounced at the time. A year after I had been to his house. And he was living in a kind of I don't know what you call it, kind of a co-op sort of a situation where a lot of modern thinkers and architects were living in this community. And anyway, so John Cage wasn't there, but who was in the community garden? David Tudor with a hoe,
nice,
digging dirt. And so Frank and I approached him and, said, well, can we join your ensemble, and taking a long shot there. And he said, well, I'm just working with John Cage and with Merce Cunningham at the time. So he said, our budget, we can't add any more people or something like that. But yeah, David Tudor, he was, my favorite pianist at the time.
Well, and he was also like Stockhausen's favorite pianist. I mean, he was the guy. Morton Feldman loved him. I mean, he was the man. So that was incredible.
It was part of that. He did a lot of interpreting. There was the group of Morton Feldman, Earl Brown, Christian Wolff, and John Cage. So they all kind of hung out together. And, I often mention, I said, when I was 14, I guess, my brother was going to the local university and they had a real nice record collection up there. So they had this one album called the 25-year retrospective concert of the music of John Cage. So it was all his music from I think 1939 up to 1958. And it was recorded in concert live in 1958. And there was this one composition that really changed my life in a way. And it was called Concert for Piano and Orchestra with David Tudor on piano. And when I heard that, because I had been previously listening to a lot of European modern music and, avant-garde, but I never heard anything like that. It was so different in its own way. And that was like a real big inspiration for me. And, that was like 1 year prior to me going to his house. But yeah, David Tudor on piano at it. It was a beautiful, like I say, if you check it out, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Sure. Well, they didn't include, what's it called? The piece As Slow as Possible that takes 639 years.
Yeah. Well, I think that's still in process.
That's still in process in Italy. There'll be like a 2-year rest, and then people line up, and then they hit a mallet, and that's like the next note. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, what I did at the last two selections on the album, it was a 3-album set, and it was, I think, Williams' Mix, which was an electronic piece, I guess, that he did in, I think, 1952 or something. And those two pieces, I always felt that was John Cage at his height. That was where it really, he took a real, because he had been doing prepared piano and.
What's up with Black Mountain College? All these people you mentioned, they're all associated with that place. And why did that place even go under? I don't even know. I mean, it's just all those thinkers and people. I mean, Tudor went there for a while, and obviously Cage and Cunningham, and the list goes on.
Yeah. Well, that was my, that had a lot to do with my when I'm trying to figure out who Gary Wilson was at the time. I had, like I said, my dad was playing in a lounge band, and then I joined. Well, actually, I saw the Beatles.
Okay, where'd you see him play?
In at Shea Stadium.
The last concert.
Well, that was the big concert.
The big
one.
Like that wasn't their last. Oh, right. It wasn't the one on the roof. I mean, the last big one to the public, right?
Yeah. Well, that was 1965, and I was like 11 years old. I think.
San Francisco might have been. Anyhow.
And that really kind of inspired me to get into a band. So but I was still playing in the school chamber ensemble, let's put it that way. And so I still
What
had
did
an
that sound
interest.
like? What did that sound like? The Beatles? I mean, did it sound like it was before
Well,
a
it was hard
stadium
to
rock
hear
was
'em.
invented? So, like, was there a sound system for this? What did it even sound like?
Could you hear it?
No, well, that was the thing. It was hard to hear them because I think it was 55,000 people
Screaming.
screaming at full force. It was deafening. Actually, it was deafening, but you had to be there at the time. It was just, they inspired. I always tell people, they talk about garage bands. At that point, every block had, young kids, rehearsing a band. So, when I got to be, I think, 12 or 13, I joined my first rock band, which was Lord Fuzz was the name of the band. And uh, actually, Cleopatra Records, we made one record, but we were a good band, actually.
It's kind of sounded like the Seeds in a way, or that era of, kind of like psychedelic. I checked out some Lord Fuzz.
Yeah.
Very
Oh, did you
psychedelic.
check out Lord Fuzz?
Yeah, I checked out some
Did
Lord
you
Fuzz.
hear Lord Fuzz?
Yeah,
Yeah. Cleopatra recently reissued that
I
song.
think
That
that's
was
a
kind
good
of wild.
move. Yeah, I
But yeah,
liked it
yeah,
better.
that was my first rock band, and we were good. That was the thing, we actually were a good band. We had the chemistry, and our parents would take us to the gigs, and we would be up against bands that were in their 20s, and we could hold, and we're like 12 and 13, and we actually opened for 1910 Fruit Gum Company. I don't know if you remember them. Simon Says, Simple Simon.
Yeah.
They were a
Yes.
bubblegum group
Yeah, I
at
think
the
you
time.
you outshone them at whatever 12, 13, 14.
Well, yeah,
Lord Fuzz had
well,
its own sound for sure. Very much. I didn't realize you were that young doing that. It's
yeah,
very,
yeah. Well, like I
very
say, that was
groovy.
yeah. So we were doing like the best, mostly covers of the best, the Summer of Love, 1967. You had a lot of really good music going on from
A
all
lot of
eras.
absolutely. Both
Jimi
political.
Hendrix,
Yeah,
San
Jimi
Francisco,
Hendrix. Yeah,
L.A., San Francisco,
very political, very
Detroit.
sexy, groovy. From the Temptations to Jimi Hendrix, Jefferson Airplane, The Doors,
You
Alice
got it. Yeah.
Cooper, all of
Yeah. It
it,
was
man.
exciting. There was a lot of real nice music going on. And anyway, so that band, we held our own till around ninth grade, I guess. And then I kind of took over the band, and then we went really avant-garde at the time, because I was influenced by John Cage by that point. And so we would do these shows. We'd get into these battle of the bands, and you know, I often remember there was one that it wasn't just a regional show. It was like all New York State battle of the bands.
Ooh.
So it was all these young bands, and at that point I was like doing totally. We had like contact mics on chalkboards, scratching with our fingers.
How did that go over?
Well, we didn't win, but very, very, tapes,
Brave,
flour,
brave.
flour, paint, straw. We found bales of straw. I
Yeah, but
just total.
going back to the Beatles, pop culture was being exposed to this kind of experimental stuff at the same time for a little
Well,
while. There was
yeah,
a window of that.
That's right. And the Beatles, were inspired by John Cage also. That's how they got
Sure.
into that kind of
Well, I love
psychedelic,
that. Yeah,
weird
I love
music.
the quote that he told you that you probably based a lot of your career on, which is that if music doesn't irritate people, you aren't doing your job. I can abide by that theory.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was his thing, and that was one of the things as we made small talk. He mentioned that to me actually. That
Great quote.
if you don't irritate people, you're not doing your job. So I took that to an extreme. So and in a small town like Endicott, there's not a lot of venues to do that. You know, everybody wants the top 40 so we'd show up in those. Yeah, we'd show up with the experimental band now in ninth grade, where I was taking it to the extreme now. And you know, places where they'd be expecting a polka band, or
were you
just
already
the wrong place.
Were you experimenting with costumes at 9 as well? Were you already dressing up? Were you already inhabiting a different look than wake up in the morning?
Yeah. Well, that was part of the thing I want when I was got into junior high. I was looking for everything that was avant-garde, including art and plays and anyways. So yeah, I kind of incorporated that into the band, where we got real visual, and then, like I say, my dad, when I got out of high school, he said, get in a working band, so that was his suggestion.
Yeah,
and
good luck.
and so that I did too. So I was, I was trying to find out who Gary Wilson was. I was developing, I was using all these different. I was a painter for a while. So
it takes some time, though. It takes time. I mean, to rope it all in. It doesn't just happen.
You're right, because in the beginning you're influenced by somebody, and so you tend to want to sound like them. And so actually, what happened is I put 2 records out before You Think You Really Know Me. I had a jazz album, kind of a fusion album that I had done in 1974.
Is that being re-released?
Yeah, that's called Another Galaxy.
Oh, okay.
And like I said, I was still searching who's Gary Wilson. And then I put out a disco kind of, at the time, a lot of the jazz people were putting out disco records. And so I put out a single that was kind of like Barry White meets Herbie Hancock. And
who was on that record? Who were the musicians on that record?
Oh, well, that was on the single. It was me and Chris Bertrino and Gary Iacovelli, he played drums on a couple cuts on You Think You Really Know Me also. But the funny story about that single, which was 1975, was I was watching the Golden Globe show a couple years back, and Questlove was DJing on the TV show. So all of a sudden, my 1975 record all of a sudden came on.
Nice.
It was when Marilyn Streep, I guess, was hosting the thing, and so I thought, well, that's kind of cool, because Questlove has been kind of a follower, a friend of mine, actually.
But not a bad friend to have.
Yeah.
What was your disco look like at that time? Were you doing a disco look as well?
Oh yeah. I
was playing the role.
Our band, we would all buy leisure suits at the time. Leisure suits were the happening. So and you had to dress the part. And I was in a working band. The piano player that played with Dorsey and Frank Sinatra and all these people, big time people, he retired in upstate New York at a town near me. And so he put together a kind of a pop jazz band with a girl singer. So I joined them because they were getting the most work in our area. So it was, I often mention Lenny Chorus. He was retired, and so much older. I was still a teenager at the time, because back then you only had to be 18 to go into a bar and to drink, basically. So I started working the clubs.
Were you playing upright bass with them?
Well, I was playing my Fender bass at the time.
Okay.
But yeah, that was like a nice moment too. I learned so much from Lenny Chorus.
I believe
he was the real thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pro, exactly.
Because like I said, he was in the 40s, and he was playing. He was a professional arranger of MGM movies, and it's the real thing. So I actually introduced him to the music of Herbie Hancock, because he was still kind of an older school style. It was a jazz pop group. And so, he had a Fender Rhodes at the time, and he bought a wah-wah pedal, I remember, after I introduced him to the Fusion. But, I saw a lot of those bands at the time. I'm talking, Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, Don Cherry, these are all bands I saw like in 1970.
Mahavishnu.
Oh, I saw Mahavishnu Orchestra on
In
71.
Endicott or New York?
Well,
at,
at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York.
Yeah.
That was like 40 miles from Endicott. But they were the loudest band I had ever heard.
Mahavishnu was.
Yeah, they were like really loud.
Whoa.
But I saw all kinds of people. Like I said, I would go to New York City, and like I told you, I only had to be 18 to go into a bar or a club.
But even back then, they didn't even give a shit. You don't technically had to be 18.
Well, I heard all kinds of people. Keith Jarrett, I really enjoyed Keith Jarrett Quartet. I saw him around 1971, 1972.
Is that Gary Peacock? Who was on bass for that?
Well, yeah, Dave Holland on bass.
Dave Holland. Okay.
And, I forget the drummer. Real sensitive players. He goes way out. One moment he's playing Debussy style, and next thing he's into free form. Next thing he's into straight ahead. And I remember I think he had Paul Motian on drums. And they're all trying to follow him, and I'm like right in the front. I think it was one of the small clubs in Manhattan or something. But who else I saw in New York? I saw the New York Dolls in 1973 in a small club.
That's why I ran away to New York. Yeah, New York Dolls.
Yeah. They were real good, actually. They had just released their album, New York Doll, I guess, or whatever it was called. And so they brought the master tapes. So right before they came on, they played the album, and they sounded just like the album, but through like big Altec speakers and all that.
So they played their album on the master tapes before they played their album. Interesting.
Yeah, exactly. They played the album.
That's bold and strange.
Maybe to prove they could do it.
Yeah, I guess so.
Weird.
Yeah. That was 1973.
I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to ask a question for both of you, because it always is a pet peeve of mine. When you go to play a show and then the DJ's playing your music before you play the show, it always drives me nuts. Why are you doing that? But I guess New York Dolls wanted to do that.
I prefer when they play Mars before or after my shows.
Almost anything.
Yeah. Well, they're I have no problem with it. It's kind of introducing the band, so to speak, and then you start playing. I saw Iggy and the Stooges in 1973.
That must have been amazing.
Yeah, Max's Kansas City, actually.
Oh
yeah. And they were real good. I remember thinking, I came up from Endicott, and I remember looking at the stage, because Max's isn't real big, so you could get right up front, and they had like 2 double stacked Marshalls on each side of the stage. I remember.
Great.
And you don't see that sort of thing in a small town, but yeah, they were real good live. That was like they just released Raw Power.
Oh, that must have been just thrilling.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is you, at a very early age, was into all this really avant-garde stuff, almost like just all over the place, experimental, and then also into seeing the New York Dolls, Iggy Pop, and then your own career becomes an amalgam of its own genre, taking from here and there, lo-fi funk, king of weird. And
so it's not
undescribable because it changes all the time.
It changes all the time. And I was going to say even further. So it's all these things that you loved and witnessed, but also all the things you've experienced working with big band legends and bringing everything together.
Exactly. That's what I always tell people. It took me, pretty much right when I, went, You Think You Really Know Me, when that came out, I felt I found myself at that point. And that was 1977, but that's an interesting story. Do you remember somebody named Robbie Dupree? He had a bunch of hits in the 1970s.
Yes. So what was this? Hold on. Let me. What were his hits?
Slip Away, or Let's Slip Away, or Slip Away was one of his big hits. But anyway,
yes. Yes.
He was living in Woodstock. So I had made demos for You Think You Really Know Me, so that, 1976 or something. And I was submitting the demo tapes to all kinds of publishers and within the areas of New York State, so to speak. So it got into Robbie Dupree's hands, and he was living in Woodstock.
Whoa.
So he invited me to Woodstock in 1976, let's say, and to record You Think You Really Know Me at Bearsville Studios, which was a
legendary studio.
Oh yeah, built by the manager of Bob Dylan and Janis Joplin.
But it was
state of the art. They had like $100,000 grand piano in there, but anyway, so I spent like a week in Woodstock. We recorded like 6.4. I Want to Lose Control, Chromium Bitch, and one other one I can't think offhand. But I was supposed to come back and try to complete the project, but he had his own career at Robbie, so he was, we didn't finish the project.
Wasn't Todd Rundgren? Wasn't he running it?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, Todd. It's a funny story with him too. I opened for Todd a few years ago actually, and we talked about Bearsville. Because, like I said, he worked there, and plus they had their own label, Bearsville Records.
Right.
Where did that happen? Opening for Todd Rundgren a few years ago.
Yeah. Well, Todd and I are on the same label, actually, Cleopatra Records.
Okay.
So I had to, my keyboard player was a huge fan of Todd. So I said, well, let me see if we could open for him somewhere.
That's funny. Oh my God.
So talk to the president of Cleopatra. So I said, well, let me see if we can pull it off. And yeah, so that was a cool show. But like you said, it all took a certain amount of time from grammar school onward, to.
Well, what's funny about Robbie Dupree is that Steal Away song was kind of like the same arrangement of what do you call it? What a Fool Believes. It's a very similar arrangement to that song, which was Doobie Brothers, McDonald and Kenny Loggins. Yeah, it was Doobie Brothers.
Yeah, that was that kind of style, right? That's where he was.
So,
we had on my demo the band, the drummer from Orleans, Still the One.
Oh yes. So all these people are getting okay. So you're interacting with these people. You're also seeing New York Dolls and Iggy Pop. You're also hanging out with
Sinatra's piano player,
and you're also hanging out with John Cage, Merce Cunningham, David Tudor. I guess it just means you just love music, or maybe you hate it so much you're obsessed with it. But it doesn't matter. You have it's just kind of, you're covering a lot of ground here.
Well, my dad being he had a really cool gig. He was like in a hotel. Plus, he worked in IBM. I tell people I'm a wimp compared to my dad. He not only worked 5 days a week in IBM, but he'd go in on Saturday, 6 days a week. Then he'd play 4 nights a week at a hotel gig with a kind of a jazz quartet for 25 years, 4 nights a week.
I mean, so he was doing, back then when they paid musicians. I mean, if you had a 4-night-a-week gig, I don't know what he was being paid, but you could maybe not raise a family, but you could pay your bills.
Yeah, well, that's what the thing is. I think these were kind of probably children of the Depression.
Yeah,
and they didn't. I never heard my dad say, "Oh Jesus," he'd take a nap sometimes when he got back from IBM, and then he'd have to play from 9 to 1 at a hotel.
Well, that's the other thing. If you had the lounge act, that's a 4-set. Night.
Yeah, exactly. So, but he never said, "Geez, I can't take this anymore." But you had to raise a family. We had like 6 people in our family. So
that's big. And maybe, and not. I mean, I don't know. Maybe he wanted to get away from the family. Maybe that's why.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's what I think. He's thinking, well, that's my retreat. I could go get away from the kids. But
some people play golf, other people work in lounge acts.
I wanna quote this concept that's here about your 1970 performances, which were cited as not only outrageous and bizarre, but that shows would sometimes include cellophane, duct tape, bed sheets, fake blood, and milk.
Oh yeah,
So
oh, yeah.
outlandish that they would often have the electricity cut in an attempt to get them to leave the stage. I love that.
Oh yeah. A lot of places would cut us off, and
Too
but the
weird.
funny thing about that too was I remember doing that very extreme avant-garde stuff, but then I'd rush home and put a tuxedo on and go play in a hotel
Lounge.
with Frank Sinatra's piano player. It was such a, but that was cool. It was that
That is
contrast.
cool. Well, I mean,
Contrast.
Gary, I'm a bass player too, and I always say bass players more than any other instrumentalists, more than drummers, play in the widest range of music styles professionally because they always
Yeah.
need us, and we have a unique experience that way. And I work with
Yeah.
Lydia, but she's
Yeah.
always like, "Well, Tim can do all this other stuff, and he does all this music you don't even like." Because you end up finding a love with all this kind of music that maybe sometimes is objectively not even good, because you find a love because you work with it all. It's weird how that works.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I liked music, so you play in a
I agree.
lounge act. You're playing with covers throughout the night. But that helps with your playing.
Yes, keeps your chops up too. Yeah.
I played with a guy out here in San Diego for 39 years. I was playing piano, and then I had a separate keyboard for bass, so I was playing piano and bass at the same time.
Nice.
And I was with him for 39 years. One of the last of the crooners, so to speak, Donnie Fennell. And I always felt, that was a good balance between the extreme Gary Wilson, and then we played like country clubs and restaurants.
I can relate, Gary. I can totally relate to everything you're saying.
Tim does an occasional wedding gig.
Oh no, I did a Long
right.
Island lounge act for years with this kind of heterosexual Liberace guy. Kind of a mobster.
Well, that was, like I said, it was a challenge in its own way because I'm a bass player essentially, and so I could play good left-hand bass. I knew the things of being a bass player, and so I often talked about with Donnie because he was like his big thing was like Johnny Mathis and Nat King Cole. So we did all that stuff, and some of those songs are challenging. So and I'm playing. We usually had like a trio behind them, and then sometimes even just two of us in front of a singer, because he was like 10 years older than me. So that was his style,
Well, it's interesting because so you're in San Diego, you're doing that. However, there is an avant-garde music history to San Diego, at least UCSD, some of the professors, and you had Bertram Turetsky there.
Well,
what's that?
Bertram Turetsky, the bass
player, yes. One of the great virtuoso avant-garde bass players.
And also the guy who started the happenings, what the heck, in New York City. Remember the happenings?
Oh, hold on.
Geez, I can't think of his name right now. But anyway, my longtime girlfriend, she was a grad student at UCSD.
Okay.
So that's where I actually ended up meeting John Cage again. 30 years later, he was an artist in residence for a little bit. So my girlfriend having a studio on campus, she had all my albums. And so I found out where John Cage was giving a concert. This was shortly before he died. And I went up to John Cage. He was sitting by the exit of the venue, nobody around him. He was all by himself. And I went up to him and I said, "Mr. Cage, you inspired me for this album." And I handed him the album. I said, "Do you remember me from 1969. He nodded, he smiled. He said he did, but I'm not sure if he did. But yeah, that was kind of like a nice ending to the whole thing.
Do you ever run into Diamanda Galas in San Diego? She lives there, right?
Yeah. She was one of the. I think she was a grad student too. But yeah, she had been a student at UCSD. I used to go there a lot because my girlfriend, like I told you, she was and then she was in the arts department also, making films, and So we would, oh yeah, Alan Capro is the happening guy in New York that started the happenings in the
Yes,
90s.
yes.
So he was one of my girlfriend's advisors, and but yeah. So we used to do a lot of shows at UCSD.
Okay.
Actually, like video. She was making videos back in the early days and 16 millimeter films, and so I would get into those, But yeah. So it takes a while. Like I tell people, you got to find your identity in music, and that's very important. So you have your own voice. That people say, "Oh, that sounds like Gary Wilson."
Well,
So
I mean, you found a way to rope it in to have your own voice. Not everyone has their own voice. I mean,
yeah,
that's also a truth, and not everyone finds their own voice. Not that
Yeah.
everyone, not everyone should necessarily. I mean,
I like to say, if you don't have a vision, don't give it a sound.
yeah. Well, yeah, it's you can see where a lot of people, because if like I told you, I had so many times where people were kind of negative to me, in the earlier days.
well, I wanted to ask you
understand.
that. I wanted to ask you that because you have a positive kind of general vibe, and you're still going forward and still doing your thing. How often
Yeah,
were you
I did.
attacked? How often were you attacked? I mean, were people? How often do people react with violence or
Oh
real
yeah,
displeasure?
yeah. Especially in the early days, we had to get like a police escort every now and then because they wanted to kill us. The audience, they really did. Small towns, they can't figure that stuff out sometimes.
Did you did you
But
ever see the group Suicide?
who is it?
Suicide.
Oh, I played with them. We did a show with them, I don't know, 1978, 79 in San Diego.
That makes
And
sense.
in my band, there was like four bands. Suicide was one of them, and The Pop was another. Some of these bands from LA came down and did a show. Yeah, that was a wild show, actually. Like what was good. Like I said,
Well, I've been doing a tribute to Suicide, a much more aggressive version for quite a few years in Europe mostly. I just got back from a tour, and
cool.
they were my first friends in New York, Suicide. But the technology has improved so that, and the person I'm playing with, Mark Furtado, it's like two Ellen Vegas behind me, so it's quite brutal and beautiful.
To Martin Resbaum.
Yeah. Well, it's
Well,
funny.
no, it's like two Ellen Vegas and
Okay.
one beyond.
Okay. All right.
Because he's doing a lot of the vocals too. So.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
I did a show with one of the guys from Suicide, and a couple years ago, actually.
well, it
but
must
what's
have been
funny
Martin,
is, yeah, Martin or whatever. Yeah.
Well, what was this disappearing act you did for a couple of decades? What was going on there?
Well, I'm saying I really didn't disappear. It's just people weren't paying attention to me.
Yeah.
I was still doing things. It's just like I said. At that time, I cut a couple singles at the time or an EP and stuff. But like I say, it was a magical time. You had talking about Suicide. I when I graduated from high school in '71. My friend Vince Rossi and we decided we're going to move to Manhattan from upstate. So we took off to New York and ran out of money within days, I remember. So now we're wandering around the village. And this was, 1971, I guess, 72. Yeah. And all of a sudden we hear all this noise and lights flashing in a loft in the village somewhere. And so we're going, well, this is what we came to New York for. So, we just walked up into the thing, and who's playing was Suicide in 1971 or 72, 71. So
very
it was
early,
yeah, very early Suicide. So I just remember some guy, I don't know the members offhand, but one guy whipping himself with a chain or something. He was hitting himself.
That would be Alan Vega.
Yeah, and then the keyboard guy or something playing something, but
yeah, Silver Apples. Silver Apples. Did you roll with
yeah,
those?
I played a show with them near Boston, actually, and I don't know, 2002 or something. When I call it my resurrection is what happened. It was you got to realize, a lot of the time, I was working a minimum wage job at a film, a movie theater, and my sneakers were falling apart. I had to duct tape them, and I would take the bus to my midnight
Shift.
gig. Yeah. So I was, and then that was like I say. Then all of a sudden, the artist Beck. I'm sure you're familiar with him.
Well,
Beck,
we know the mom. Yes.
yeah,
Debbie
and
Hansen, yes, good friends with her.
Odelay, and all that stuff. So all of a sudden, I'm going to my midnight. I had to grab a bus at midnight to go to my job, and I turned the TV on, and Beck had just won all kinds of awards for Odelay, and he was talking after the MTV Video Awards show. This was 1997, and all of a sudden he starts quoting them 6.4, and I want to lose control of my songs. I'm thinking, did I just hear that? I'm still, like I said, I couldn't even afford a phone at the time, and but still the timing. See, that's what's strange about the whole thing. Even though Beck was playing my songs in his concerts, matter of fact, I just spoke to him a few months back, trying to add
Has
me
he
up to
started
one.
paying your rent yet? Question: has he started paying your rent yet?
Well, no. See, it was a hard time paying my rent. That's what I'm saying. So,
Well, as I like to say, your love don't pay my fucking rent. Somebody should pony
yeah,
up.
well, that's what I'm saying. But what happened is in 2002, everything changed,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, that Motel Records reissued "You Think You Really Know Me," and then everything exploded. All of a sudden, the New York Times ran a page story about me, kind of the artist who never was, or I don't know, or something like that.
Is that when the film came out about you?
Yeah. Well, then they did the documentary, the film.
Playing at Lincoln Center. Amazing.
Yeah. So it was a magical time. I often tell people, it was
Well,
like,
I have a question about this, and of course you feel free to answer or not. Do you own the publishing to all these things?
well, in a sense, I do. For like, You Think You Really Know Me, the album, and Forgotten Lovers, and then I have a separate person who, well, of course, you have Cleopatra released my last 8 albums or 7, and they handle all the publishing.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's excellent that, one place has the interest and the intelligence to put it out in all of its diversity.
Yeah. I've been very happy with Cleopatra. They didn't ditch me after 1 or 2 albums. They kept with me. But then I have another guy who does like placement and stuff, and he was like the manager of Stones Throw Records, Peanut Butter Wolf, and that's a story in itself. All of a sudden, I hooked up with Stones Throw Records, and all of a sudden now I'm in the underground hip hop rap, in some of their audience,
So it's amazing, Gary, because you have all these influences, all these professional experiences, all these things you love and you've imbibed. It's so much that it leaks out into all these other worlds, hip hop, you name it, pop rock like Beck and all. It just kind of seeps.
Alt jazz, disco.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you have so much love. They have so much to take. They have even more to give. That's cool. Right?
Yeah. Well, you got to keep going. That's what I tell people. You can't give up. Yeah.
So
the whole thing.
So you have a similar story to Howlin' Wolf on some levels, where he kind of like moves up to Chicago from Mississippi to Memphis and then to Chicago, and then kind of does his thing. He's like, wait, no one's really paying attention. Then goes back, and then there's the British invasion, and everyone says Howlin' Wolf's one of my biggest influences, and then it all comes soaring back again because all these people love this guy.
Yeah. Isn't that kind of cool? It's like
that is cool.
All the people who kind of, I'm not going to say rejected me, because I was really pushing the album. You Think You Really Know Me, because I self-released that. I had to put my money up and all that.
But it was also the timing was so good because it was before all the internet free downloads and media information. So that period in the 90s where people were going to use record stores and sifting and just really searching and trying to find stuff and to discover stuff, as opposed to just this insane endless surplus that never ends, and there's no real satisfaction or victory. I mean, to some degree with some people, but it's not the same experience.
Yeah, well, like I say, in the 1970s, you had that. Like I say, my first gig in New York, was in 1977 at CBGB's, and I remember I went up there and. Because I'm coming still from Endicott, and I remember going to CBGB's, and the bartender said, "Well, Hilly, what was his name? Hilly Crystal was the owner of CBGB's." So she said, "Well, he'll be in a few hours," and then because New York was really happening in 77 and stuff. That was. So if you could get a gig at CBGB's, that was like a cool thing.
So it's funny because you, Lydia Lunch, and Harley Flanagan were all kind of hovering around and entering CBGB's, but you never officially met, as far as you know, back then. Well, I mean, probably a lot of other people, but these are all people who have been on the podcast, and obviously Lydia co-hosting. But so you two never ran. Did you ever see, Gary? Did you ever see Teenage Jesus? Did you ever see Lydia Lunch perform?
Who did I ever see? Who?
Did you ever see Lydia Lunch perform?
Oh yeah, I think didn't we do a show in Denton, Texas, with Cool Keith, and I forget who they.
We were on the same festival, but we with Lydia, we had to leave the day before you performed with Cool Keith.
Yeah, that was it.
We're in the same festival, so we didn't actually.
And that guy from Suicide was there too.
Yes, Mark Rev. Yes, all of us were there, but we.
Oh yeah, were you there?
But we didn't. Yeah, I was there. I was playing bass actually with Lydia.
Oh, cool.
We had Neil Hamburger night. It was the.
You're right.
Neil
Hamburger.
Exactly.
I did a couple shows.
Are you talking about Denton? What are you talking about?
Yeah, in Denton.
Oh,
Gary was on the same fest. He was on the same Rubber Gloves. He was on the same fest, but we had to play the next night in Austin or San Antonio. So that's what happened. Yes.
What a coincidence, huh? Yeah. So you keep up with it, and I just did a show with last night I did a show with Jeffrey, what's his name, Jeffrey Lewis, and then last month we did one with Jimmy Brown. Have you ever familiar with him? Jimmy Brown.
I mean, there's a few Jimmy Browns.
Jim and then separate E and then Brown. Yeah, he's selling out concerts all over the world right now. But it was a sold out show in Los Angeles last month, and so I still do occasional shows, and you got to keep going, But
I think Cleopatra is a good place for you to be because they have such a diverse catalog as well.
Oh yeah.
From the Meters to the Dead Boys to Helios Creed to Anti-Flag. I'm looking at the Iggy. They have Billie Holiday. It's just such a diverse label that I think that's very good for you to be in such company. Megadeth, even. I mean,
exactly.
What the hey? I mean,
and the president likes me.
Well, that's always good.
Yeah. Brian Pereira. He's he's always been on my side. Let's put it that way. And
well, that's good to have people on your side. Gary, is there any shows coming up? Anything you want to plug, or is there any releases coming out that you want to plug?
I'm doing like I said, just did a show last night at the Casbah in San Diego, and then
played there many times.
Familiar, yes, exactly.
We're going to do another show in San Diego on March 12th at the Tower Bar. And then we're doing one with, I guess, Period Bomb.
Oh, yes.
So we're doing a show at Monty's bar in Los Angeles.
We know that one too, in Los Angeles, yes.
Yeah, on the 20th of March. And then, they got another one in April. So, yeah.
So what does your band consist of now? What's the band format now?
Well, I got a good band now, actually. Sometimes in the older days, some of the venues would put together a band or something for me, but now I've got a pretty solid band. I mean, I got one that I'm actually proud of the boys in the band, and it's guitar, bass, drums, keyboard, and then I do lead vocals, and so I'm like, real happy with the band right now. We actually sound really good.
Well, that's coming directly from the king of weird and the master of lo-fi funk himself, the mysterious, experimental, avant-garde, post to everything, maybe pre-everything, Gary Wilson. And I'd like to thank you for being on the Lydian Spin. Been a pleasure.
Well, thanks for inviting me.